You got your two big blankies. Which one do you want to go to?
Today I'm going to teach you how to knit. There are a few steps involved, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. Everything is based on a knit stitch and a purl stitch. 2 stitches. And it's just combinations of those 2 stitches that make almost everything you're going to knit. But there are a couple things you need to know before you can get started. One of the easiest ways to go about gathering up the materials that you need to knit, and this is also one of the cheapest ways to go about it, is to figure out what you want to make first, obviously, and then go to the store and look for a pattern. When you find a pattern that you like that is connected to a ball of wool, that ball of wool is what's going to work for that pattern. And that's cool because it saves you running around looking for a specific kind of wool. Always buy your wool from the same bin. If I come back next week and pick out red wool, it might not be the same shade of red because it was made in a different batch. So if you're going to use more than one ball of wool, you're best off buying them in the same place at the same exact time. I prefer to buy things that people can wash in the washing machine. And on this label, it's going to tell you what you need in terms of supplies. So for example, I need a size 6 knitting needle, alternatively a size 4 millimeter knitting needle. That's the same thing. Let's deal with knitting needles first. There are 2 different kinds of knitting needles. There are straight knitting needles and circular knitting needles. This is a size 6 US knitting needle. You see, it's a relatively long knitting needle. I can get shorter ones too that are also size 6. That's a straight needle. Then there are circular needles. This is a size 6 circular needle with a 29-inch connector. That means that these are the same size as the straight knitting needles, but that there's 29 inches of whatever this material is connecting those 2 needles. Why would you need circular needles? Good question. Sometimes you want to make a circle that's connected. It's like a hat, for example. Whatever it is that you're making, if it's connected, then you're going to need circular needles. I always use circular needles, even if what I'm making is not a circle. Why, you might ask? Because I don't like doing things twice. When you use a straight needle, you have to put these puppies down at some point. You walk away, you step over it, you step on it, somebody picks it up, somebody throws it, the dog picks it up and starts messing around with it, the cat, who knows what happens to it. In any case, by the time you get back to it, you're missing stitches off your needle because they've slid off the needle. Then you're going to have to either put those stitches back on the needle, or you're going to have to pull all the stitches out until you get to sort of where it's screwed up, and then you start over. And so the reason I like circular needles is because it keeps your stitches on the needle when you walk away. For example, here I have a 16-inch size 6 circular needle, and I'm making boots. This 16-inch size 6 circular needle is called a 16-inch size 6 circular needle because it's size 6 in terms of the size of the needle and 16 inches in terms of the length between the 2 needles. Some projects are bigger than others. If I'm making a blanket, I need a 29-inch circular needle so that I can keep all of the stitches on the loop because there are like hundreds of stitches for a blanket. But because I'm making a little boot, which is much smaller, I have to use a smaller size circular needle because if I decide to start knitting, watch what happens. I can reach, you see? Now if I had 16 more inches or 13 more inches in length, it would be hard for me to knit this tiny little thing. Moving on. You've got your pattern, you've got your wool, and your wool is you have enough of it, and it's all from the same batch, and it's all the same color or the right color that you need. You've got your knitting needles, you know what size of knitting needle you need, and you know what kind of knitting needle you need. And now you've got to put some knots on the knitting needle to get started, right? So how do you get started? First things first, you have to do a gauge. If you're making something, the pattern assumes that you're knitting loops that are a certain size. And so when it tells you how many rows to knit and how many stitches to knit, it's assuming that you're knitting a certain size stitch. So you have to double check your knitting against what they're assuming that you're doing. So for example, the gauge for this pattern says that you should have 22 stitches and 30 rows, and that should equal a 4x4 square, 4 inches squared. So if I knit 22 stitches across and I do that 30 times, I should have about 4x4. Why do you do that? So you can make sure that you're knitting the same size that they're expecting you to be knitting. Because if your little square is much bigger than 4 inches by 4 inches, that means that you're knitting too loosely. And your finished product is going to be too big. If it's smaller than 4 inches by 4 inches, that means that you're knitting too tightly. And you need to loosen up just a little bit because you're going to make a product that's too small. It's good to knit things that are flat for a while until you get used to how to do knit stitches, how to do purl stitches, and how to combine them to create other shapes. Flat patterns that require knits and purls are the easiest, hands down. So I would say that's a good place to start. You need to put stitches on your needle. I'm going to show you this a few times because it's kind of hard to see. I've created a bridge. I stick the needle underneath the bridge and hold onto the wool on the top. Then I bring my needle over top of the wool and underneath the wool that's around my thumb and underneath the wool that's around my index finger, and then I slide the loop off my thumb and pull it tight. That gives me 2 stitches. Ready? I'm going to show you again. You're going to put the wool around your hand, have the loose end around your thumb, put the knitting needle underneath the wool, and put your finger on top so you hold on to it. Now, bring your needle over top of the wool. Got it? Can you see? And then, when you come around to this side, you're going to pick up the wool like this. So, you're going to pick it up and bring it across with you, and then go underneath that piece of wool, and then you're going to come under the loop so it slides right off your finger. Okay? So I'm going to do it one more time, just in case, and I'm going to do it full speed ahead. Now, it's much easier to add additional stitches. You take the wool, and you wrap it around your first finger, like this. See? Now you can put the knitting needle underneath and make a loop. And this is how you make stitches. 12 stitches. Now, very quickly I'm going to show you a knit stitch. I'm only going to show you a knit stitch today, and we'll work on a purl next time. I don't want to get you confused because they're very similar to one another. In fact, they're opposites of each other, so it's easy to get them mixed up. How do you knit? Well, you're going to take your knitting needle that has no stitches on it, and you're going to put that underneath the first loop. Got it? Underneath the first loop. And then you wrap your wool around that needle and pull it through. Easy peasy. Now the first row that you're going to do is a little bit harder than the rest because it's just tighter than the rest of them because you've just put those stitches on. So underneath through the front, wrap it, pull it through, and pull it off. Underneath through the front, wrap it, pull it through, and pull that puppy off. Okay? Now I'm going to finish this row really quick, and I'll show you the second row because it's probably easier to see. And it's much easier to knit than the first row. What I usually will do for the second row is I will take that little loose end and I will knit it in a couple stitches so that it gets tucked away. See? I've just knit it through 3 stitches, that's all. And then when I'm done, I can just cut that piece off. Underneath, wrap it around, pull it through, take it off.